Hi there, welcome to Indycar on Friday the 17th of August. I'm Gordon Ross. On today's show, I wanted to discuss a number of issues arising from yesterday's programme. I've been contacted by a couple of people who seemed to think that my own opinions on the timing of the independence referendum had somehow changed because I was trying to explain the position of some voters who feel that we should wait until after Brexit before we call another referendum. Now, I always say to people when I'm giving information, I don't endorse the positions that I'm explaining. I have my own position on Brexit, which I'll explain in a moment. But just for clarity, this show tries to explain the situation from different points of view, to show other people's points of view from within the independence movement, so that those of us with more, say, fixed ideas of what we want can understand the position of some of the other yes voters when they say they wanted to delay the new Indy ref. However, let me lay my cards on the table so you all know what the position is for myself personally and for Indycar as a programme. So going forwards from today, I should let you know that my position is very similar to the one it was last year. I haven't changed my mind. As far as I'm concerned, the latest time at which we can actually call the referendum will be October this year, for a very, very simple reason, and that is that by October this year, the British government has to have come up with what it wants from the European Union, written up as a deal, as a big shopping list of things they want from the deal. Now that will then go to the European Union, who will look at that and based on their existing rules and structures will decide what out of that sort of cherry-picking shopping list that they are prepared to give the UK. But as soon as the United Kingdom publishes this white paper on what they are actually going to ask for in the negotiations, we will know what it is that's been voted for. We will know what the future is going to be based on the response from the European Union, or the likely response from the European Union. They've already said that they will not compromise the four basic tenets of the European Union. Those are the free movement of capital, of goods, of services and human beings to and from the various countries of the EU. Those freedoms have to be maintained, otherwise trade deals are not possible and EU memberships are not possible. So if the UK wants to leave the European Union but cherry pick some of these freedoms, then that will not be successful. So my point about calling the referendum in October is based on one thing. The timing of the start of Brexit is the 29th of March in 2019. Now if you do a little bit of very simple arithmetic, if you take the middle of October as the cut-off point, where Britain makes its position known to everybody, including the EU, and the 27 nations of the European Union are having a meeting that month as well to discuss the British proposals. If we take that as the launch point, and if Nicola Sturgeon were to say at that moment, we are going to have a referendum in 4 months' time. That's the minimum time that you are allowed under the rules for referendums. The preparation time is approximately 16 weeks, 4 months. That would take you to the end of February. So my view is that if we are going to make the deadline of March the 29th, then that referendum has to happen at the very beginning of March, at the latest at the beginning of March 2019. If it waits any longer than that, there is the risk, which everybody knows about, of Britain crashing out of the European Union without a deal, or having a bad deal and going out with a bad deal. Who knows what will happen, but the point is that after the UK leaves the European Union, the gloves will come off and suddenly devolved parliaments will be shut down. People like David Mundell will take over as Viceroy in Scotland to run Scotland on behalf of the Tory party, so that the Scots do not start to rise again and want more and want their independence again. That will be snuffed out using the Henry VIII powers that the Tories have threatened to use already, and bearing in mind that a cross-party group of UK senior politicians has written a new constitution which guarantees that, or They say that the UK Parliament would be sovereign over Scotland, and Scotland would have no say in any matters of the Constitution. In other words, they would stamp on us with the heel of a jackboot after the Brexit deal has gone through and they've written their new constitution. Now, whether this is an empty threat or not, I don't know. Some people have said to me I shouldn't dismiss this constitutional convention in London as just simply a threat or more sabre rattling. But the point is, they can do it anyway. Whether they have a constitution prepared or not, they can do it with the Henry VIII pearls as soon as they like after Brexit is complete, because they will no longer have the European Court of Human Rights or the Bill of Human Rights in the European Union to protect us from the worst excesses of Tories in London exercising the so-called Henry VIII powers, which allow them to do whatever they like in Westminster to the rest of us. I've said many times in the past that I think that if Brexit turns out to be half as bad as we expect, the Tories have already said they'll be stockpiling medicines and food, and they would call in the army to fly goods around in helicopters. It's not much of a stretch from that to putting troops on the streets to stop looting, to having curfews, and to having some kind of emergency legislation which suspends all normal constitutional politics. So the risk is there, and my personal opinion, and this is my opinion, not anybody else's, is that we must vote before March the 29th. And so I expect and I hope that the Scottish Government leadership under Nicola Sturgeon will decide in October, having seen what the British Government plans to do for its Brexit deal, will make the decision then. Because I feel if we do wait until September, as was trying to explain yesterday, some people feel we should wait until September next year to do this for a variety of reasons. I think it would be a mistake. I think it runs the risk of the Conservative government wrong-footing us yet again with another one of their unpredictable sidesteps, rule inventions, goalpost moving, rule changes or other devices that they will employ to prevent us getting what we need, which is getting out of this union before this union gets out of the European Union. We need to act quickly, and 4 months, I beg your pardon, is the shortest lead time that we can get for a snap referendum. So the fastest a referendum can happen, given the timetable that we now know, would be probably the beginning of March next year, just before the big cut-off date, the big leap in the dark that Brexit is going to be. And that's why my opinion is we should be given a referendum at the end of February. We'll have the vote at the end of February and just get it done and get out before the UK drags us out of the European Union against their will. Now, I did a poll of my viewers yesterday to see what people thought of exiting this year or exiting later in 2019. Now, my poll wasn't that accurate because the question I posed was about whether we should exit this year before Brexit, but what I meant was before the 29th of March. The indications are that somewhere in the region of 68% of you, I think it was, I'll check, actually go back, but it was around about 68% the last time I looked, I think. 68% of you want to have this referendum before we leave on March 29th. And the other 32, whatever it was, percent wanted to wait until September later in 2019 to do it. So there is a split, but it's 2/3 to 1/3 in favour of doing it early. And I think that's probably reflects the majority view. I'm saying probably, it's not a scientific poll, it's just a straw poll of my own viewers, and we all tend to hold similar opinions. It's interesting that 1/3 of viewers thought we should wait, and I think that shows what I was saying yesterday, that 1/3 of our number are not in such a big rush. They believe that we can do this a little bit later. My point is, I think it's too much of a risk. We would have a period between March 2019 and September 2019 where the Tories can do all kinds of damage to Scotland and its chances of getting a referendum. Those of you who say, but we can't get a Section 30 order, we won't be able to do it. Well, no. And people who say you can't do it without a Section 30 order because we'll end up like Catalonia are forgetting one important point, that the Brexit referendum was only for information. It was only advisory. The fact that Brexit is actually going to happen means that the government has set a precedent that a constitutional referendum, which is only advisory, is being taken seriously to the point where we're actually leaving the European Union. So if that is the case, and Scotland has a referendum which is advisory on its constitution, then there's no reason why that shouldn't stand. If it's good enough for Brexit, then it's good enough for Scot-Exit as well. So don't think that we are in any way like Catalonia. We are not in any form like Catalonia. For one thing, we are a country, a recognised nation, and we have been all along. We're in a union. We are not we're not a county. You know, we're not a region. We're not a province, as Northern Ireland has become. We are a nation. And as a nation, we have every right to have a referendum which is advisory and then act upon it. If the British government chooses to go against that, in the middle of their Brexit negotiations, in the middle of all the hassle that they're going to have with Brexit, they would be extremely foolish. Can you imagine them trying to fight a constitutional crisis with Scotland while they're dealing with the major economic crisis of Brexit at the same time? No, I think the best time to go, the best time to actually ask or demand a referendum has got to be October. It's the point where the Tories are most vulnerable, where they're on the ropes, where they've got too many other things to deal with Europe, and they have too many other problems to sort out to concentrate on fighting against 10% of the population of the UK who want out. And as I say, we are the only country in the British Union which is able to get out of this Brexit fix. I'm not saying that we would actually stay in Europe after we've left the UK. We might not be able to. We might actually still have to Brexit, because although our vote happens before Brexit, we still have to go through the process of leaving with the UK first before we can leave the UK and make a decision for ourselves about Europe. So it's not going to fix Brexit, but it is going to give us a remedy, a rescue from the worst excesses of what will happen after we leave the European Union. So that's the show for today. My own opinion. It's not news, and it's not other people's opinions, it's not other people's views, it's just my own view. So for those of you who were worried that I was losing the plot yesterday, I never lose the plot. I always try to explain to people that sometimes I just explain someone else's point of view, and I always make a point of saying I'm explaining somebody's point of view here. This is why people think this way. I don't endorse anybody else's views. I just try to bring them to the fore so we can discuss them. To be fair, even the people who criticised yesterday's show were civil about it, and when I pointed out to them that I wasn't endorsing that position, they realised that it is just a misunderstanding. So I always make it a bit clearer next time that if I am setting out a position which is not held by the mainstream, I'll make sure that you understand I'm not endorsing that. I'm just trying to explain their point of view and why they think that way. There is a certain logic to the argument for leaving the independence referendum a little bit later, until people have started to really feel the effects of Brexit. But believe me, I think by the time it gets to March next year, people will very, very clearly have a view down both barrels of Brexit. It'll be staring them in the face. I don't think they're going to need to actually lose their jobs or have their house taken away or watch the pound plummet, because for one thing, the pound will be plummeting anyway and they'll see that. And I think waiting until after Brexit to do this is pointless. It's better to get Scotland out and have the vote so that the UK goes into the Brexit negotiations without Scotland's resources to call upon or to trade. Because the one thing that the UK has at the moment is they've got all of our resources to barter away. Our fishing rights, our oil, our gas, all of these things they control at the moment. And if we don't make it known to Europe that we are leaving the UK, then those will be used in the negotiations for Brexit, and we will lose them because the UK will have bargained them away. If the UK can't bargain with those, it weakens their position still further. But it strengthens Scotland's position in Europe when we come to go back to the EU and look for a deal of our own. We will have those resources back, we'll have them under our control, and the UK will have to do whatever it wants to do, but it's not going to involve us anymore. Okay, I think I've said everything I want to say today. As usual, if you have any opinions, criticisms, suggestions, you know where to find me, and I'll talk to you hopefully on Sunday. Bye for now.